We are almost 2/3 of the way through the NHL season, so in today's video I thought I wanted to do something a little bit fun and give you my predictions on which teams are going to make the Stanley Cup Playoffs, and we'll go through who I have as all the first round matchups. We'll get into all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today I want to discuss the upcoming 2019 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Now for the most part, there's some teams here that are pretty well secure in making the playoffs, but there's still a lot of very interesting races here to determine the final number of playoff spots, especially in the Western Conference where really all teams are still kind of in the hunt. We're probably going to see a record low for point totals for the last couple of playoff spots, but as we get this far into the season, even teams near the bottom of the standings, the very bottom like Chicago, LA, etc., are still in the mix. Even though they haven't been having great seasons, they're still within striking distance to get into the playoffs here. So let's jump in and I'm going to give you my breakdown of the first round matchups for the 2019 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Now let's get started with the Eastern Conference. Winning the Atlantic Division, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning and being the top overall seed in the Eastern Conference. Then they will face off against the number 2 wildcard team. Now currently, right now the wildcard teams belong to the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Montreal Canadiens as I record this video. This video is being recorded here on Thursday. It likely won't be posted to the channel till Saturday, so there could be a slight difference in the standings here over the course of the recording to the time of posting. However, I do see a change in the wildcard positions here before the end of the season, and I think the surging Carolina Hurricanes are going to get into one of those spots and finish as wildcard number 2, setting up a first round matchup against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, to some this might be a little bit of a mismatch. Tampa Bay is obviously a powerhouse. There's really not a lot of weaknesses to that team, but I think it's a huge step for Carolina to really finish strong and get into the playoffs for the first time in a long time for that franchise and really get some experience for their good young players here as they continue to build moving forward. Now, the top team in the Metropolitan Division, which will be the number 2 overall seed in the Eastern Conference, I have as the reigning Stanley Cup champions, the Washington Capitals. Now, as I record this video, the New York Islanders currently hold the division lead. They're having a phenomenal year as well, exceeding many people's expectations so far. And I do see them being a playoff team, but I see the Capitals really surging near the end and still grabbing that first place finish in the division. That sets up a first round matchup of the Capitals against the number 1 wildcard team, which I have finishing as the Montreal Canadiens. Now, the Montreal Canadiens are another team having a surprising bounce back season, exceeding a lot of people's expectations. I must say a lot of the moves that Marc Bergevin has made over the offseason and early this year have certainly worked out in their favor, and they've really bounced back, largely too on a bounce back strong year from goaltender Carey Price. As we've said before, Carey Price really, mostly in the recent years here, been their best player, and they really go as far as he can take them. And right now, he's taking them back to the playoffs here, in my opinion. So Carey Price helps Montreal get back to the playoffs as the number 1 wildcard team and goes head-to-head against the Washington Capitals in the first round. Now, getting back to the Atlantic Division here, I do see the number 2 seed being the Toronto Maple Leafs and the number 3 seed being the Boston Bruins. So that first round matchup is going to be yet again the Maple Leafs battling the Bruins here. This is going to be an epic battle yet again. We've seen some very interesting, entertaining 7-game series from these two teams here in the past, and we very well might see yet another one. Could this be the year that the Toronto Maple Leafs finally get past Boston and get a playoff round of experience under their belt for a lot of their young stars and get deeper into the playoffs? Only time will tell, but I do see them having another first round matchup this year. Over in the Metropolitan Division, I have the number 2 team being the New York Islanders and the number 3 team being the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the Islanders will face off against the Penguins here in round 1. Of course, the Islanders, like the Habs and others that we've already mentioned here, have been a very surprising team. A lot of people thought with John Tavares leaving town that would absolutely write off the Islanders and they would have a terrible season and end up near the bottom of the standings. Well, they've proven a lot of people wrong. They've gotten some really solid goaltending out of both goaltenders, but Robin Lehner's really been a great story for them this season. Their forwards have been scoring at a good pace, and their defenders have even bounced back and are playing better this year as well. all around, Barry Trotz has been a great influence on that Islanders team, and he is going to take them back to the playoffs here for a first-round matchup against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So just to quickly summarize the Eastern Conference playoff battles, I have down as the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Carolina Hurricanes, the Toronto Maple Leafs battle the Boston Bruins, the Washington Capitals battle the Montreal Canadiens, and the New York Islanders take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, the big omission there right now in the Eastern Conference is the Columbus Blue Jackets. So unfortunately, I think the Columbus Blue Jackets right now are plagued by distractions for star players Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky. Both have uncertain futures with the team. They both appear to be unwilling to sign new extensions to remain with the club longer term. I do think there's a possibility one or both are traded before the NHL trade deadline, February the 25th. And I do see the Columbus Blue Jackets taking a little bit of a step back here in falling out of the playoff picture. I know there's been a lot of talk about what do the Blue Jackets do? Do they keep these players as their own rentals? But I have a feeling here in the next couple of weeks leading up to the deadline, that distraction is just going to be like a big black cloud over that team. They're going to lose more than they win. They're going to fall out of the hunt. They may or may not trade these guys. It's going to depend on what returns they can get. But I see probably the odds of at least one of them being moved and they're falling out of playoff contention. And then they're going to have a lot of other tough decisions to make here during the offseason. If both of them are gone by next season, they will free up a lot of cap space. Obviously, they can try to go after some other players, but it's also going to leave two big holes in that team that's going to be very, very incredibly difficult to replace. So we'll see what happens, but I do have the Columbus Blue Jackets taking a step back and missing the playoffs. Now, the other team right now that a lot of people are putting a lot of hope behind is the Philadelphia Flyers, who've been on a massive winning streak. Their streak did come to an end tonight against the Los Angeles Kings. They lost in a shootout, so they still picked up a point. So that's still, a streak where they're picking up more points here and continuing it on. Carter Hart's been phenomenal for them. Even Stolarz has been great in the net in the times that he's been in there as well. And they're going on a bit of a streak here, but I just think that they're going to exert so much energy trying to get all those points made up here that they're going to come close, but fall a little bit short of getting into the playoffs this year. Now let's jump over and take a look at my thoughts and predictions on the Western Conference. Now, the number one overall seed in the Western Conference I have this year is going to be the Winnipeg Jets from the Central Division. It is going to be a very close battle. Obviously, right now you get teams like Winnipeg and Nashville, Calgary, San Jose, all kind of battling it out for that division lead and top spot in the Western Conference. But at the end of the day here, by the end of the season, I have the Jets coming out as the Central Division leader and the number one overall seed in the Western Conference. Now, as I record this video, the wildcard spots are being held down by Minnesota and Vancouver, but I don't see the Winnipeg Jets facing either of those teams in the first round of the playoffs. I have them facing off against the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche are a team who had a pretty solid start to the year, but as of late, they really have not been doing so well, and they've really been falling quite quickly, and currently right now sit outside of the playoffs. But that top line of theirs, between McKinnon, Renton, and Landeskog, I think can score their way back to some victories and get them back here into the wildcard spot. This is going to be a very, very tough matchup to take on the Winnipeg Jets. They likely don't have a lot of success in the playoffs, unfortunately. I think the Jets are just too strong, but I can see those guys getting their act together here, finishing strong, and grabbing that number 2 wildcard spot in the Western Conference. Now, right now, the Calgary Flames have a slight lead on the San Jose Sharks. As I record this video, those two teams are actually playing this evening, and the Sharks have a fairly big lead, so they might close that gap here a little bit. And I do see the Sharks outplaying the Calgary Flames down the stretch and snagging that Pacific Division title from them in that number 2 overall spot in the Western Conference. So the San Jose Sharks will win the Pacific Division, in my opinion. And the Sharks will face the St. Louis Blues, who are going to work their way back to the playoffs here and for that first round matchup against the Sharks. Now, so that means that I have both wildcard teams in Minnesota and Vancouver both taking a step back and missing the playoffs. Now, for Vancouver, that's really not all that bad. They weren't really expected to make the playoffs this year anyway. A lot of their young players have really taken some good step forwards. We had a great year so far at Elias Pettersson. Really, the future looks bright in Vancouver. But I do see them faltering here a little bit and finishing outside of the playoffs. And with Minnesota just announcing that their captain, Mikko Koivu, is out for the season, this team has kind of been hot and cold all year. And personally, I think they need to make some more changes during the offseason. I see Minnesota stepping back here as well and missing the playoffs. Now, the Blues have, in my opinion, have a good shot at getting their act together. They've been really hot in their last 10 or 11 games. They have picked up another victory this evening in a 1-0 shutout for Bennington getting a shutout this evening. And I do see them having some games in hand here, and they're going to use that to make to their advantage here to make up those lost points and get themselves back into a wild card spot for that first round battle against the Sharks. Now, the Sharks are a pretty strong team. Just like I said about Colorado, the Blues are going to be in tough in the first round of the playoffs, but I do see them getting themselves back into the mix here. Now, jumping over back to the Central Division, I have the number 2 team being the Nashville Predators and the number 3 team remaining, the Dallas Stars. I think the gap there is just a little bit too big, and I think the Preds and the Stars are relatively safe and will end up making the playoffs in those positions. Jumping back to the Pacific Division, that obviously I mentioned the Calgary Flames are going to lose that top spot to the Sharks, but I do see them remaining in second place, and the team that's in third right now, the Vegas Golden Knights, remaining there as well. I think both teams have a good enough lead and are playing well enough that they'll certainly hang on and finish in the top 3. So we'll have the Vegas Golden Knights battle the Calgary Flames in the other Pacific Division playoff matchup. So to summarize my Western Conference playoffs here, we get the Winnipeg Jets battling the Colorado Avalanche. You get the San Jose Sharks taking on the St. Louis Blues, the Nashville Predators battling the Dallas Stars, and then we have the Calgary Flames battling the Vegas Golden Knights. So both teams currently holding down wild card spots. The Minnesota Wild and the Vancouver Canucks, in my opinion, will falter and end up missing the 2019 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Of course, this is just my opinion on who's going to make the playoffs. We'll be doing further predictions later on once we know who the playoff teams are going to be, and I'll give you my round-by-round predictions as we go through the NHL playoffs. But for right now, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments and your predictions down below. Who do you think is going to make the playoffs? Give me your first-round matchups in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel here, hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans, so enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.